The chamber of the Galactic Trade Council was louder than usual, but no one raised their voice. Hundreds of species filled the vast circular hall. Some floated in gravity fields. Some coiled around polished pillars. Others stood behind transparent screens filled with glowing numbers. Above them, giant holographic ledgers shimmered in the air. Market graphs rose and fell like slow ocean waves. At the center of it all stood a single blue hologram of Earth. The High Moderator activated the central display. The hall fell silent. "Effective immediately," the moderator said. His voice amplified across the chamber. "Humanity's trade privileges are revoked." The words echoed. Earth will no longer have access to the interstellar credit network. All imports and exports are suspended. All contracts are frozen. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the holographic graphs shifted. Lines that once glowed green turned red around Earth symbol. Trade routes faded. Credit streams disconnected one by one. A thin alien delegate leaned toward her aide. "This will break them," she whispered. Another representative nodded. "They rely on our markets. They will return within days." Around the chamber, quiet satisfaction spread. Humanity had grown too confident, too independent, too influential in trade negotiations. This was a correction, a lesson. The moderator finished the statement. "The Council expects full compliance." The hologram of Earth dimmed. Far away, on the planet itself, the announcement reached human space. On Earth, it was morning. News networks received the message. Financial systems logged the sanction. Automated alerts flashed across government servers. Yet the streets of New York remained busy. Tokyo trains ran on time. Cargo drones continued their routes above Lagos and Sao Paulo. Farmers checked irrigation systems. Engineers reviewed code. Children walked to school. There were no sirens, no emergency speeches, no stock market crash. Inside a quiet office overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, Human Ambassador Elias Mercer stood beside a long window. The sky was clear. Cargo shuttles moved across it like slow birds. An aide rushed into the room, tablet shaking slightly in his hand. "Sir, the Council has activated the sanction." Mercer did not turn around. "Full restriction?" "Yes. All trade lanes, all credits, were locked out." There was a pause. The aide expected anger. Shock. Orders. Mercer simply nodded. "Log it," he said. The aide blinked. "Sir." "Log the time. Notify the network." "That's all." Mercer finally turned. His face was calm. Not cold. Not worried. "That's all." He walked past the aide and out of the office. Across human space, similar messages moved quietly through secured channels. No public broadcast. No dramatic speeches. Just confirmation. The Interstellar Credit Network removed human access nodes. Human financial AIs marked the change. External trade processors shut down their handshake protocols. Then something else happened. Human ships near Council space began adjusting their positions. Not retreating. Not attacking. Repositioning. Long-haul cargo carriers altered course toward internal human colonies. Mining vessels redirected shipments. Data relays shifted encryption patterns. Several ships powered down their transponders entirely. To alien observers, this was strange. In a monitoring station orbiting a neutral world, two alien analysts stared at their screens. "Why are they not protesting?" one asked. "They should be scrambling," the other replied. "Their exports account for 17% of outer sector food stabilizers. Check their markets." The analyst ran the query. Human domestic markets showed small fluctuations. Nothing extreme. Internal credit systems remained stable. Energy production steady. Logistics within human territory continued without delay. "That's not possible," the first analyst said. "They just lost access to the entire galactic economy." On Earth, Mercer entered a secure conference room. A wall-sized display showed a map of known space. Human territory glowed in soft blue. Council territory shimmered in silver. A general appeared on the screen. "All fleets remain on defensive posture." "Good," Mercer said. An economic director joined the call. External dependency metrics are within predicted tolerance. Begin phase 2, Mercer said. There were no raised voices. No panic, only procedure. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, representatives celebrated quietly. Some discussed how long it would take before Earth requested negotiations. 3 days, one said confidently. Less, another answered. Above them, market graphs continued moving. At first, the changes were small. A shipping delay in the outer rim, a minor spike in rare mineral futures, a short pause in agricultural synth deliveries. Nothing alarming. Not yet. In the monitoring station, one analyst frowned. Several human cargo fleets have stopped transmitting. Lost? The other asked. No. Power down. Why would they do that? The first analyst zoomed out. Human ships were not vanishing randomly. They were forming new patterns. Quiet routes between human systems. Tight clusters around key infrastructure points. It looked less like retreat and more like preparation. On Earth, Mercer paused outside the conference room and looked once more at the map of space. They think we need them, his aide said softly. Mercer gave a faint, almost tired smile. Everyone depends on something, he replied. Behind him, secure networks rerouted traffic. Financial AIs began isolating external variables. Human-controlled trade algorithms shifted into closed-loop mode. Across alien space, analysts kept watching the screens. Human ships weren't scrambling. They were repositioning, and some of them had gone dark. Hour 12 after the sanction. At first, nothing dramatic happened. A cargo ship arrived 6 minutes late to a refinery station near the outer rim. The delay was small. The station supervisor blamed traffic congestion and signed a clearance form. On a different world, energy prices rose by 2%. Traders blamed weather disruptions in a gas harvesting sector. It did not make headlines. In the capital of the Galactic Trade Council, financial data streams showed minor latency. Transactions that usually confirmed in 1 second now took 3. Analysts marked it as temporary system adjustment. The council members were calm. These are normal fluctuations, one senior delegate said. The system is adapting to the removal of human access. Another nodded. Markets always react before they stabilize. No one sounded worried, but the numbers kept shifting. Hour 18. 2 shipping corridors reported scheduling conflicts. Automated traffic systems requested manual review. That was unusual. The systems rarely needed organic oversight. Hour 20. Insurance rates for long-distance cargo spiked without clear cause. The risk models had adjusted themselves. Why? An underwriter asked. The system returned a simple answer. Uncertain probability. The underwriter frowned. Uncertain about what? The AI did not elaborate. Hour 24. That was when it stopped being small. On the mineral exchange of Terralise Prime, bids for rare star-core alloys froze mid-auction. Buyers could see the listings, but confirmation signals would not finalize. Traders shouted across the trading floor. Is it a cyber attack? No breach detected, a technician replied. The validation servers are responding slowly. On 3 agricultural worlds, synth food contracts stalled. Shipments were ready. Payments were approved. But final credit validation never completed. Across multiple sectors, financial graphs began to move in sharp, uneven patterns. In a quiet office within the Council's Economic Oversight Wing, a young economist named Ref Vell studied the data alone. He had been assigned to monitor post-sanction stability. His screen was filled with red and yellow markers. He zoomed in on the validation delays. Trace dependency. He ordered his assistant AI. Lines appeared across the display. Interconnected systems. Subroutines. Cross-sector verifications. He froze. Why is human code still active? He whispered. The AI responded. Human-designed financial architecture remains embedded in 62% of current market systems. Ref leaned back slowly. He began running deeper checks. Interstellar logistics routing. 70% of long-distance trade lanes were secured and optimized by human-written algorithms. Even if humans were removed from trade, their code still guided the ships. long-distance security protocols. Most were maintained by human cyber defense teams who patched vulnerabilities in real time. Credit validation. Nearly half of all galactic credit transfers passed through quantum processors designed and calibrated by human engineers. Reth's breathing slowed. They didn't just trade, he said quietly. They built it. Across the galaxy, more systems began behaving strangely. Freighters requested updated route maps. The updates did not arrive. Fuel distribution chains hesitated, waiting for confirmation packets that came seconds too late. Insurance models recalculated risk every few minutes, increasing rates automatically. Still, there were no explosions, no hostile fleets, no human warships moving toward Council space. In fact, human space was quiet, very quiet. Reth sent an urgent memo to his supervisor. We are observing systemic performance degradation linked to dormant human maintenance protocols. His supervisor responded within minutes. Clarify. Reth swallowed and typed. Humans are not attacking. They have simply ceased active maintenance of shared infrastructure. A long pause followed. Then, that is not possible. Maintenance contracts were tied to trade privileges. Correct, Reth replied. Trade privileges were revoked. In orbit around a central banking world, technicians try to manually override slowing validation nodes. Restart the auxiliary processors. They are online. Then why is confirmation lag increasing? Because the quantum calibration updates had stopped. No one had noticed before how often human engineers adjusted those systems. Tiny corrections, constant tuning, invisible labor that kept everything smooth. Without it, the system still ran, but imperfectly. Small errors accumulated. Hour 30. Confidence dropped. Traders began pulling large sums from central accounts, fearing instability. Hour 32. One major bank on Helier Prime experienced liquidity strain. Its reserves were strong, but transaction confirmations were delayed. Rumors spread faster than facts. Are credits unstable? Is the network compromised? Council leaders convened an emergency economic session. This is temporary, a senior delegate insisted. Human systems will degrade, without us as well. But when analysts pulled data from Earth, they found something unexpected. Human markets were stable. Internal trade flowed through isolated networks. Human energy grids functioned normally. Their credit systems did not rely on the interstellar credit network anymore. Reth stared at the comparison charts. They prepared, he whispered. In the council chamber, voices grew sharper. Contact the human ambassador. Someone demanded. What do we accuse them of? Another asked. They have not violated any treaty. That was the problem. They had not attacked. They had not sabotaged. They had simply stopped maintaining the systems they once supported. Hour 36. The first major galactic bank issued a statement. Due to temporary validation irregularities, withdrawals above standard limits are suspended until further notice. Across trading floors and financial hubs, silence followed the announcement. Then panic began to spread, not because of war, not because of violence, but because the system that held everything together was no longer being quietly held. Hour 48. The noise stopped. For 2 days the galaxy had been restless. Numbers moved too fast, then too slow. Traders shouted. Officials reassured. Systems recalculated. Now the screens were still. On the central exchange of Virex Station, thousands of holographic charts hovered in the air. Prices for minerals, fuel, and food flickered once, then froze. A trader tapped his console. Refresh. Nothing changed. System lag, someone muttered. But it was not lag. It was halt. Across 3 major sectors, commodity markets suspended automatically. The algorithms could no longer calculate stable value. Too many variables were uncertain. Too many confirmations were delayed. Freighter traffic began to stack up at key jump points. In one corridor near the Arcanes belt, over 200 cargo ships waited for route validation. Their navigation systems required updated risk maps before entering long-range jump space. The updates did not arrive. Captains requested manual clearance. Traffic control centers tried to respond. Their predictive software returned warning signals, routing confidence below safe threshold. Ships held position. Fuel supply chains fractured next. Gas harvesters in the outer systems completed extraction cycles. Tankers were ready to move refined fuel to core worlds. But payment validation stalled. Without confirmed credit transfers, automated transfer contracts would not release cargo. Some captains took the risk and moved anyway. Most did not. Currency confidence fell faster than fuel reserves. On dozens of worlds, citizens began converting digital credits into physical commodities. Food stores emptied. Energy cells sold out within hours. Not because there was no supply, but because no one trusted the numbers anymore. Still, there were no explosions. No fleets moving into attack formation. No human warships crossing borders. Just silence spreading through systems that once hummed without thought. The Galactic Trade Council declared an emergency summit. Representatives appeared in urgent holographic form. Voices overlapped. Restart the validation clusters. We are attempting. Override the dormant maintenance protocols. We do not have the root authorization. Then rewrite the code. Engineers tried. They accessed core financial architecture that had been running for decades. Layer after layer of logic opened before them. It was elegant, efficient, interconnected, and unmistakably human. Comments inside the code were written in simple Terran language. Maintenance notes, patch schedules, vulnerability warnings. Most of those warnings had been quietly resolved over the years by human engineers. Now, small faults surfaced everywhere. Micro errors in transaction timing, tiny mismatches in encryption keys, outdated calibration values in quantum processors. None of them fatal alone. Together, they were enough. Why were we not informed that human maintenance was as extensive? A council member demanded. An analyst answered quietly, because it never failed before. On Earth, the skies remained clear. Internal trade networks flowed through isolated systems. Human ships moved between colonies without delay. Energy grids balanced supply and demand. Credit transfers validated through independent processors. In a secure office overlooking the ocean, Elias Mercer watched a live feed of the Council Summit. An aide entered. They are requesting direct communication. Mercer nodded once. Open channel. The Council chamber appeared before him. The same vast hall that had announced the sanction now looked strained. Voices were sharper. Movements quicker. The High Moderator leaned forward. "Ambassador Mercer," he said, barely hiding anger. "What have you done?" Mercer's face remained calm. "Nothing," he replied. "You expect us to believe this is coincidence?" Another delegate snapped. "Our systems are collapsing." Mercer folded his hands in front of him. "You removed us from the system," he said evenly. We complied. Murmurs filled the chamber. "You are responsible for the degradation of shared infrastructure," the moderator insisted. "We are responsible for maintaining what we were permitted to access," Mercer corrected gently. "Access was revoked." A silence followed. "You built interdependencies without transparency," a delegate accused. "We built efficiency," Mercer said. "We maintained stability." Quietly. "You could restore it," the moderator pressed. Mercer did not answer immediately. "You believe we were economically dependent," he said at last. "In truth, we were mutually integrated. There is a difference." Behind the council representatives, more alerts appeared. Another banking network suspended withdrawals. 3 additional exchanges halted trading. Insurance markets locked completely. The galaxy's financial pulse slowed further. "Reactivate your maintenance teams," the moderator demanded. Mercer's voice did not rise. "Trade privileges remain revoked," he said. "Our engineers no longer have authorization to interact with your systems. You will let this spread? You chose separation." In orbit around multiple core worlds, credit validation nodes entered protective standby mode. They were designed to prevent cascading corruption. When confidence dropped below threshold, they froze. Better no transactions than flawed ones. Sector by sector, financial movement stopped. Freighters remained in holding patterns. Fuel shipments waited at docks. Factories slowed production without confirmed supply contracts. The silence deepened. Back in the council chamber, even the loudest delegates fell quiet. They had expected protests, perhaps retaliation. They had not expected absence. Mercer watched them carefully. "We warned repeatedly about centralization risks," he said. "Decentralization proposals were rejected." No one answered. Across the galaxy, the final major interstellar exchange suspended operations. A message broadcast across financial networks. All non-essential transactions are paused pending systemic stabilization. Within minutes, the interstellar credit network entered protective freeze. Transfers stopped. Markets locked. Accounts frozen in place. A full galactic economic freeze began. And still, no human ships fired a single shot. Hour 60. The silence began to hurt. On the world of Lyris, a hospital administrator stared at his shipment tracker. A medical freighter carrying order repair gel had been scheduled to arrive 12 hours earlier. Status: awaiting fuel authorization. Without confirmed payment validation, the fuel depot refused release. Doctors began rationing supplies. On another world, power grid stabilizers started failing one by one. These devices balanced energy flow between cities. They were maintained through automated service contracts that depended on active credit flow. When the contracts froze, updates stopped. Small blackouts rolled across industrial zones. Not war, not destruction, just systems slowly losing balance. Supply contracts across agricultural worlds were suspended. Farmers had harvest ready, but transport agreements were paused. Warehouses filled. Cities waited. In orbit above a major council capital, the military fleet remained in formation. Warships were polished and ready. Weapon systems were fully charged, but their fuel reserves were limited. Without active trade routes and confirmed supply chains, refueling cycles could not be guaranteed. A fleet commander reviewed his status board. All vessels operational, his aide reported. "For how long?" the commander asked quietly. No one answered. Inside the Galactic Trade Council chamber, the tone had changed completely. There was no more anger in the voices, only worry. A systems analyst projected new data across the central display. Economic activity across multiple sectors had dropped to near zero. Civilian distress signals were rising. "We believe this was pressure," one delegate said slowly. "It is exposure," another replied. Ref Vel, the young economist, stood near the center of the chamber. His earlier warnings were now part of official reports. He addressed the council carefully. "Human infrastructure was integrated into our systems at foundational levels," he said. "Not as leverage, as support." A senior council member leaned back in his chair. His voice was low. "They didn't crash us," he whispered. He looked at the frozen graphs hovering in the air. They stepped away. No one disagreed. A request for updated system control was sent to human space. It returned automatically. Authorization revoked. The message was polite, neutral, final. Far from the council chamber, Earth continued its routine. In New York, markets opened on time. Internal trade flowed through decentralized networks built years ago. Human credit systems validated transactions through independent quantum processors that were never connected fully to the interstellar credit network. Energy production remained stable. Fusion plants supplied more than enough power for domestic and colonial use. Cargo ships moved between human colonies using isolated routing algorithms. These systems have been tested repeatedly through simulations. Decades earlier, human economists had debated worst-case scenarios. What if access is removed? What if sanctions occur? What if integration becomes dependency? Quietly, over many years, humanity built alternatives, redundant energy grids, independent supply chains, closed-loop credit systems, self-sustaining colonies, not to threaten, not to dominate, but to survive without asking permission. In the ambassador's office overlooking the Atlantic, Elias Mercer reviewed status updates. "Internal stability?" he asked. "Secure," his aide replied. "Civilian impact?" "Minimal." Mercer nodded once. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. On another screen, live feeds from alien worlds showed rising civilian concern. Hospitals requesting priority shipments. Power administrators pleading for technical assistance. Trade ministers searching for emergency liquidity solutions. Mercer watched quietly. They believed we were competitors, his aide said. We never competed, Mercer answered. We supported. Back in the council chamber, the reality had settled heavily. We must consider negotiation, one delegate said carefully. On what terms? Another asked. Survival, came the reply. A senior council member stood and addressed the assembly. For years, we viewed humanity as an ambitious trader, he said. We believed their influence was strategic expansion. He paused. It was structural integration. Ref added softly. They did not centralize control. We did. Silence followed. Reports continued arriving. Medical shortages expanding. Fuel reserves declining. Currency confidence near zero. And still, no human fleet moved aggressively. No demands were issued. No threats transmitted. The absence itself was the pressure. The council had expected defiance. They received compliance. At last, the High Moderator spoke. Open priority channel to Ambassador Mercer. Immediate, an aide asked. Urgent. The request was transmitted across space. On Earth, Mercer received it. He studied the message for a long moment before responding. In the council chamber, every delegate watched the central display. The line connected. And for the first time since the sanction began, the council was not issuing a command. They were requesting negotiation. Urgently. Hour 72. The galaxy felt tired. Markets were frozen. Trade lanes were silent. Civilian systems operated on emergency reserves. Government spoke in careful, measured tones. No one used the word collapse anymore. But everyone knew it was close. In orbit above the council capital, a single human ship exited jump space. No escort, no fleet behind it, no weapons charged. It transmitted its identity openly. Diplomatic vessel. Earth origin. Inside the council chamber, every delegate watched the feed in silence. Elias Mercer stepped off the ship alone. No guards. No dramatic entrance. Just one human walking across polished floors toward leaders who, 3 days earlier, had believed he would be begging. He entered the chamber. This time there was no applause, no pride, no superiority. Only waiting. The High Moderator spoke first. Ambassador Mercer. Mercer inclined his head slightly. What will it take? The moderator asked carefully. To restore the network. There was no accusation in his voice now. Only need. Mercer looked around the vast chamber. Hundreds of species. Hundreds of systems depending on one decision. He spoke calmly. Restoration is possible. A quiet wave of relief moved through the hall. But it will not be a return to the previous structure. The moderator nodded slowly. State your terms. Mercer did not raise his voice. Equal representation in trade governance. Some delegates shifted, but none protested. Decentralization of financial validation systems. Mercer continued. No single network should hold systemic control. Several engineers in the chamber exchanged glances. They understood now why. Full transparency in economic sanctions, he added. No hidden triggers. No unilateral restrictions without review. The moderator listened without interruption. No collective punishment of developing worlds. Mercer said next. Sanctions must target decisions, not civilians. A few delegates lowered their eyes. And recognition of human sovereignty. Mercer finished. Without conditional access clauses. He stopped speaking. There was no demand for territory. No request for payment. No requirement for apology broadcasts. Just reform. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. You seek no reparations? One delegate asked quietly. No. No expansion of territory? No. No compensation for the disruption? Mercer's expression did not change. Stability is compensation. The moderator leaned back slowly. You could have demanded control. Mercer met his gaze. "We do not seek control." A series of urgent whispers spread among the delegates. Calculations were run. Impact projections updated. The terms were firm, but they were not exploitative. Finally, the moderator spoke. "The Council agrees to negotiation under these conditions." It was not a triumphant announcement. It was acceptance. Within hours, human engineers reactivated maintenance protocols under new shared authorization. Quantum processors received updated calibration keys. Financial validation nodes came back online sector by sector. Freighter routes resumed cautiously. Fuel shipments restarted. Banks lifted withdrawal suspensions in stages. The silence began to lift, not with celebration, but with careful movement. Days later, in a quiet archive chamber, a young alien delegate approached a senior archivist. The delegate's voice was low. "If humanity could collapse us without firing a shot, why didn't they?" The archivist studied the frozen market charts, still stored in the system records. "Because the goal was never destruction," he said quietly. "It was correction." The delegate frowned slightly. "But they had the power." "Yes," the archivist replied, "and that is why they use restraint." He turned off the display. Across the galaxy, systems stabilized under a new structure. Governance expanded. Validation networks diversified. Sanctions required collective review. Humanity did not rise above the Council. They stood within it, equal, independent, integrated by choice, not assumption. In orbit around Earth, trade ships moved again. This time, their routes were balanced across multiple systems, not centered in one. Mercer stood once more in his office, overlooking the ocean. His aide reviewed the final report. Network stability restored. The aide said, "Shared oversight active." Mercer nodded. "Civilian impact?" he asked. "Recovering." He looked out the horizon. The galaxy had learned something in 72 hours. Power was not always shown through force. Sometimes it was shown through absence. The galaxy did not fear when humans fought wars. It feared the moment they proved they didn't need one.